Good evening and welcome to today's broadcast. I am Sheeba Rakesh. Friends, today we confront the invisible barriers that dictate the boundaries of our lives. Our discussion centers on a transformative concept: accept yourself, transcending self-limiting beliefs and other aspects. We often act as our own harshest judges in life, internalizing doubts that restrict our true potential. In this session, we unpack the mechanics of these self-imposed boundaries. And in this journey, we have with us Dr. Shirley Jain from the Department of English, Isabella Thoburn College, Lucknow, who I am sure will explore some strategies to dismantle negative self-talk, embrace personal flaws, and cultivate profound self-acceptance. Tune in as we learn to rewrite our internal narratives and step into a life of genuine empowerment. Dr. Shirley Jain, I welcome you to the studios of Akashvani, Lucknow.
Thank you, Dr. Sheeba Rakesh. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let me start by asking you, Dr. Shirley, what do we all understand by the concept of self-acceptance as we see it around ourselves?
Okay, Dr. Rakesh, I would think that the self is a very, very complex word. And to understand the self, we have to actually uncover the layers of the individual perception that goes with the self. Before answering what is self-awareness, it is imperative to know the self. Before we say accept yourself, we say who are you? The self in you. The question I think one should ask themselves is, who am I? It's not our nomenclature, our name, which gives us the identity. It's basically something more profound. It is our identity as a soul, as a spiritual person. Only when I recognize myself, I know myself, will I be able to accept myself. When we say, who am I? How would we define ourselves? What are the characteristics of us? Or are we just seeing ourselves from the view, from the gaze, from the expectation of society, of culture, of the standards which are set before us to fit in? Now, once we know that, once we know ourselves, which is not easy, I'm sure, because we are so much surrounded by the noise and the distraction of the world, that somewhere the self gets lost and it's only the person that is existing in society, in the spaces that we walk around, in the areas that we function. So how are we? Are we actually who we are? The essence of us. Are we that? Or are we just individuals trying to fit in wherever we go in different capacities, in different roles? Are we that? When we actually see ourselves, we see ourselves as not as who we are. It is such a sad thing that we see, and this comes with, I think, a lot of time, a lot of thought, a lot of, introspection and reflection and contemplative thinking, that you feel that this is me. And you need that space, actually. You need that solitude. You need that awareness to come about you, to understand yourself. Once you get to that stage where you begin to know yourself, it is then that you begin to understand that I have these flaws, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, these are my attributes, these are the things which are not so good about me. But anyways, this is me. And I'm happy with whatever I am, whoever I am. And yes, there are areas which are not so very promising. I shall work on those areas. There comes the concept of first understanding the self, knowing the self, recognizing the self, and then accepting the self in whatever way, in the barest form that we are.
That is a wonderful way of putting it, Dr. Shirley, because even the Katha Upanishad, as you were talking about the self and the understanding of what the self is, or who am I remember the related teachings in the Katha Upanishad, which distinguishes between Priya and Shreya. When Yam tells Nachiketa that the pleasant, that is Priya, binds a person to the worldly, while the good, that is Shreya, leads to liberation. So we have to be out of the ignorant understanding of the people that we are and understand that we are all something spiritual, or rather, let me put it that way, that we are something more than what the world expects us to be.
A divine component.
Absolutely. But when we start understanding that we are the same as that gaze which is looking at us with certain expectations, with certain boundaries, the question that comes to my mind is, why should we accept ourselves? In the sense, it is always better if other people accept us, even if we don't accept ourselves, and we give in to the gaze, we give in to those expectations.
We are very relational creatures. We live in relationships with other fellow human beings. And so we would want to be very desirable. Everybody, we want inclusion, we want acceptance, we want love, we want recognition, we want praise. It's very normal. But at the same time, we should not get self-conceited and obsessed about what we desire. Because kind of fitting in every time to please somebody is not at all going to be easy. These things are very unstable and they would change with people, with circumstance, with situation. This is not going to be permanent. So, it's so transitory. And how can you actually, put yourself every time to adjusting to a person's need? So it becomes more of a performance. So we have to understand that we have to be very realistic than being very idealistic and trying to fit ourselves to, to please the other. Because in the process, we are actually losing our individuality. We like to be accepted. Yes, as your question read, that why should other people accept us? Because we have to be socially compatible. We need that social acceptance, but not at the cost of losing ourselves and immersing in that. We cannot be strangers to ourselves. We have to understand who we are, accepting ourselves, and then actually seeing that how we can actually leverage ourselves into the larger stream of other selves and how compatible we can become. There are so many external conditions. There is so much external stimuli that is actually working in us and is kind of redirecting the self. So we need to actually channelize our energies and see where we are taking ourselves. We have to understand human preferences and adjust to the requirement, the expectation of the other also. So that, there is a kind of a compatible relationship between the self and the self of the other as well.
But sometimes I would also like to ask you, these things go to the extremes, because when we start accepting ourselves, sometimes we go to the extent of accepting ourselves so much that we forget that it is also very, very important to be accepted by others, albeit in a healthy way. What are the cons of self-love then?
Okay, I would say self-love again would be like, self-obsession with the self. That you feel that you're so perfect, you're so right, that you feel that you don't need correction. You don't need people, you don't need correction, you're not open to criticism. But actually inner peace for yourself and where you are, you can bring peace when you are actually not broken by criticism or not intoxicated by praise as well. If that state doesn't arise, then you become a very negative kind of a person. You become a narcissist because you are only thinking about yourself, that you are right, that the other person you don't need an opinion by the other person, that the other person needs to, accept you as you are, applaud you, praise you, recognize you, which is so incorrect. We have to understand that there are preferences, there are expectations, there are desires by other people also. And so we need to fit. There has to be some kind of positive alignment. I think the worst thing that can come to a person is vanity. I, me, myself. When that steps in, then you are single out and then you actually become, despair sets in.
Now, social media and the concept of the self vis-a-vis other acceptance. Your take?
In modern times, social media has taken such an important role in our lives. When we accept ourselves, when we are talking about self-acceptance, we are talking how we are going to be accepted when we are seen. We are so much cautious about our image. That image leads us to a state of our ego. And that ego, it actually leads us to a state of being so involved with ourselves. We lose our own individuality, the self that you are. You have a curated self. And that curated self actually, loses the true self, the true you. So the social media does that. You want to be liked, you want to be viewed, you want to be seen, you want to be followed. In that pursuit, you lose your mental peace. You're always trying to be, liked by everybody. And that you. I think, everybody could be liked. Everybody would be liked as long as you remain your true self. And the true self is not, the very ideal self. The true self could be a self which is, not so perfect with our imperfections. We may have so many, and we all have. Otherwise, we would be divine. But it is not. So we are humans, and with humans come our frailties also. So we have to accept that. And that is the beauty about being human. That is the beauty of the self. When the self is able to recognize that these are my weaknesses. But anyways, even if I am still pleased with myself. I can go on improving myself. I'll try to, improvise on myself. I'll try to make myself better, upgrade myself. Sadly, the state with social media is so difficult. It's so difficult that we have lost ourselves to the gaze. So there's a constant struggle for acceptance by others, and identity is basically a performance which is measured, which is evaluated. And so it becomes very performative.
Your message to the listeners.
I would say that, self-consciousness develops through recognition. But recognition is quantified by these things. So we should not let our recognition be measured or quantified. We should actually leave that recognition for our own introspection. Here I would like to talk a little about, the philosophies of the Buddha, Bhagavad Gita, Christianity. All these come about together and they talk about we transcend the self to a realm where we are not people for the world. We are in the world, but not for the world. We are the self for our maker, for the divine. As the Bhagavad Gita says, detachment from praise and blame is treated as true wisdom. Christianity says that do not root yourself in public admiration, but be seen and liked by the Almighty. Buddha says you suffer when you build your identity entirely from what others think, but you suffer when you become obsessed with protecting an ego image of yourself. Peace comes when you stop clinging to both. Even Carl Jung says the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. I'm reminded of the very famous monologue by Jacques in As You Like It, who says all the world's a stage and we are performers and we have our exits and our entry. So after our performance, when we have our exit, how do we see our exit? Is it our true self or we are still lost in a character?
As stated in the Kathopanishad, know the self as the lord of the chariot, the body as the chariot, intelligence as the driver, and the mind as the reins. And once you have done that, you will be able to realize that the existence of the self is more than just what the world wants it to be. I'm also reminded of that song which we often sang as a prayer when we were students. Humko man ki shakti dena, man vijay kare, dusron ki jai se pehle khud ki jai kare. And sometimes we would end up thinking that this is fostering some sort of an arrogance or vanity. But the fact is that it was telling us to embrace our true selves so that we are able to enjoy and celebrate the world in a far healthier manner by embracing the other people who walk with us in life. On that note, we come to the end of an incredibly enlightening conversation. We have explored how identifying and challenging our deepest insecurities allows us to rise above the self-imposed limits. True growth begins the moment we stop fighting ourselves and start accepting our present self. Thank you, Dr. Shirley Jain, for sharing these valuable insights on self-transcendence. And thank you, our listeners, for spending your time with us today. Remember to question your doubts, embrace your unique journey, and do join us next Friday at 7:31 p.m. for more such empowering discussions. Till then, Sheeba says, Namaskar. Thank you so much, Dr. Shirley, for joining us today in the studios.
Thank you, Dr. Sheeba Rakesh. Pleasure being here.